Coming up next, Patricia Medici. Patricia dedicates her life to the protection of South America's lowland tapir. Throughout her work, Patricia has increased the knowledge on this poorly understood species, which she refers to as gardeners of the forest. I wonder what that means. She leads a long-term research study and conservation program on lowland tapirs. In 2008, Patricia launched a nationwide Lowland Tapir Conservation Initiative, which has been expanding her program to other parts of the country ever since. All right, so I am going to bring in Patricia. We have Patty here. Hello, welcome. Looks like you're on mute here. Going to ask you to unmute so we can hear you.
Hello, sorry about that.
No problem. Great to have you here.
Thank you so much for being here. I was super excited about the invitation. Thank you.
Yeah, we are looking forward to learning about this completely new creature to me, the tapir. I'm in Canada. Okay. We don't have them up here.
You don't. You do not. Okay, good. I'm happy to bring tapirs into your life.
Perfect. If you have a presentation, you can get started and screen share, and okay. I'll bring it up when it pops up, and I can see what these things look like. The gardeners of the forest.
This one, share.
Yep. Great. We can see it here.
You can see.
And we can, if you want to bring your presentation, perfect. All right, let's get started. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much. Well, once again, thank you so much for being here, for the invitation to be here. I'm super happy. And I'm here today to talk to you about the Lowland Tapir Conservation Initiative and to share what we have been up to over the past 25 years here in Brazil. I'm speaking from Campo Grande, the capital of Mato Grosso do Sul state, pretty much in the middle of nowhere. So yes, this year we're celebrating 25 years of tapir conservation work here in Brazil. We started as a small project, as a small program here in the country, and little by little we expanded to all these different biomes, all these different ecoregions in Brazil, and we expanded the scope of the work, and we started with research and then kept moving forward to different themes, different components of the work. And this is pretty much my life's cause. This is what I do, and this is what I will keep doing until I drop dead. But why tapirs? Conservationists working on many different species, we always get this question: why tapirs? Why jaguars? Why sponges? Why whatever we work with? Well, tapirs are exposed to many different threats, and some of them are the usual suspects that we've been talking about for the last couple of days. So in case of a tapir's, deforestation is a big threat, which is usually caused by the opening frontiers for large-scale agriculture and cattle ranching. And when you see Brazil on the news and you hear about sugarcane and the large plantations of soybean, this is what I'm talking about. You driving through plantations of soybean for 3-4 hours. This is what we call large scale. And this brings us to the problem of pesticide contamination, which has been affecting many species here in Brazil in many different parts of the country. Roadkill is a huge threat to tapirs, again, in many different parts of the country, but particularly here where I am in the state of Mato Grosso do Sul. We have many highways here in the states that are the main champions of roadkill in the country. Poaching is another threat, particularly in the northern part of the country, in the Amazon. And I'm sure you heard last year about the big fires here in Brazil, in the Amazon, in the Pantanal. And the tapir was one of the species that was heavily impacted by those huge fires in 2020. So these are the different threats affecting tapirs, and some of them are more or less serious in different parts of the country, and that's the kind of information that we need to come up with, that we need to investigate when we're trying to conserve them. What are the main threats in different parts of their distribution? Another reason why we have to worry about tapirs is the fact that they have a very long reproductive cycle. It's usually 13, 14 months of gestation. Only one little baby, like the one in the picture, like the little watermelon, as we like to call them, only one of those is born. Twin tapirs, it's very rare to happen. And that one little watermelon, they have a high percentage of mortality when they're that young. So we're actually talking about a 2-year cycle, 2-year reproductive cycle to produce one little baby tapir that might or might not survive. So in a population of, let's say, 100 tapirs, if there's some kind of a threat affecting that population and the number of animals is reduced by, let's say, 50%, it's very unlikely that that population will ever be able to recover when you think about that very slow reproductive cycle. So the combination of all of this, all the different threats, and the characteristics of their reproduction keeps tapirs on the IUCN Red List of Threatened Species as vulnerable to extinction. They have a large distribution throughout South America, 11 different countries, 21 different ecoregions, but they're doing better in some of these ecoregions, such as in the Pantanal, and they're in really bad shape in some other ecoregions, such as the Cerrado, the Chaco, the Llanos in Venezuela. And so we have to be, we really have to pay attention at what's going on with these animals in the wild, so that we can intervene if something serious comes up. Another reason, as was mentioned, we call tapirs the gardeners of the forest, because they're very effective dispersers of seeds. They're herbivores. 50% of their diet consists of fruit, and they disperse those seeds through their feces. And they have really large home ranges. They're wide-ranging species, so they move a lot, and they move long distances. So they bring the seeds that they swallow to different parts of their home range, different parts of the habitats that they use. And we used to say that they play with biodiversity. They shape and maintain the forest as it is. So they play a huge role when it comes to maintaining biodiversity. And of course, I always say that another good reason to protect tapirs is the fact that this is the cutest animal offspring in the animal kingdom. So there is no discussion there. I always say that I'm not open to disagreements about this. I mean, look at the beautiful watermelon. So a little bit about our history. We started, as I said before, in 1996 in the Atlantic Forest in São Paulo State. And that was a project that suddenly took over my life and became a nationwide initiative. In 2008, when we started to expand, we started to bring the project, our team, the expertise, the different approaches that we developed to different parts of Brazil. The first stop after the Atlantic Forest was the Pantanal, the largest continuous freshwater floodplain on the planet, the most amazing place in the face of the earth. If you haven't been to the Pantanal, you have to do that as quickly as possible. It's an amazing place, boosting with wildlife all over the area. So we started there in 2008. In 2015, we expanded once again to the Brazilian Cerrado in the central part of Brazil. It's the open grasslands and shrub forest in the states located in the very center of Brazil, around the Pantanal, around the Atlantic forest, and in the south of the Amazon. This is the main epicenter of economic development in the country. This is where you see most of the big soybean, sugarcane plantations, highways. Most of the big cities in Brazil are located in the Cerrado. São Paulo is one of them. So it's our biome that suffers the most, and most of the wildlife in this ecoregion is threatened with extinction. And this year, 2021, we're starting the Amazon Tapir program. We're running our first expedition to the Amazon in June, in a couple of weeks. So the vision for this is to have these different programs operating in the main biomes where tapirs are found, and collecting high quality information about these animals in these different places, and understanding what are the threats really affecting them in these different parts of the distribution. Putting numbers on all of this, how many tapirs are lost to roadkill, how many tapirs are found to be contaminated by pesticides, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Just like getting a good clear view of the situation, of the status of tapirs in these different parts of Brazil, so that we can develop strategies to conserving them. We have a small team. It's 6 of us full-time, veterinarians, biologists, all kinds of professional backgrounds, and people that dedicate their lives to studying and conserving tapirs here in the country. And we have different components, as I said in the beginning, that we kept adding as we evolved, as we grew. And I would like to talk a little bit very briefly about some of them. Research is very much at the core of what we do. We strongly believe that we need that high quality, robust scientific data, scientific information to be able to develop conservation strategies. Tapirs are very difficult to study. They're nocturnal, solitary, so we have to rely on indirect methods to study them. So telemetry is the main method for us, and we have to catch them, we have to anesthetize them, we have to install the collars, and when we catch them and anesthetize them, we take advantage of that situation to collect biological samples for other components. But over the years, over the past 25 years, we have captured 172 different individuals. 2 of them were actually captured last week in the Pantanal, and we have collared and monitored for different amounts of time, over 100 tapirs in different biomes in Brazil. Another method that we use a lot that brings a lot of information for us is camera traps. These amazing devices, they bring lots of information in terms of social organization, reproduction of tapirs, how long the offspring stays with the mom, what's the interbirth interval, what's the mortality rates for juveniles, for subadults, for adults. So all kinds of all the little pieces of information, life table parameters that we need to be able to model these tapir populations in different parts of Brazil, and to get to know their status and what would be the main effects of the different threats on these different populations. So camera traps, it's a big tool for us in all the different biomes. And as I said, we catch the tapirs, we anesthetize them, we take that opportunity to collect samples for health assessments, for genetic studies, again, in all the different biomes. We collect all kinds of biological samples you can possibly think about, and we have a huge biobank here in Campo Grande that provides samples to many researchers around the country for different studies. And yes, as I also said before, we also run threat assessments. How many tapirs are killed on Brazilian highways every year, and what can we do to stop that? What kinds of mitigation strategies we have to use to solve that problem, how to reduce pesticide contamination, how to reduce poaching, and so on and so on. So it's different mitigation directions we're taking to try and contribute to the development of conservation strategies. Right now we work in two different directions, if you will. One of them is what we call tapirs in paradise. So a good example of that is the Pantanal. As I said, it's a large wetland near the border with Bolivia and Paraguay, 160,000 square kilometers of continuous, rich, super healthy habitat for tapirs. The Pantanal is the main stronghold for lowland tapirs in South America. There is no doubt about that. So this is an open lab. This is the place we go to get those little pieces of information we're still missing. As I mentioned before, the mortality rates, the survival rates, all the little missing pieces of the puzzle that we still need to collect to be able to really have a clear view of the status of these animals in these different biomes. And the Pantanal provides that opportunity to us. So we treat our Pantanal study area as a control population. Tapirs in paradise, tapirs as they should be. That's very much free of threats, tapirs in an ideal situation. And then we have tapirs in hell. And if we think about tapirs in hell, the first thing that comes to mind is the Cerrado biome, which is a mosaic of threats. Everything I said before, the epicenter of economic development in the country, over 2 million square kilometers of this kind of habitat. And this is just a little map of our study area in the Cerrado, and you can see the mosaic I'm talking about. Yellow is cattle ranching, pink is sugarcane, red is eucalyptus, the purple is soybean. So very little dark green spots, which is Cerrado habitat. Less than 25% of the Cerrado is actually Cerrado habitat. And watching tapirs in the Cerrado is more or less like this. You're going to see them in the middle of the pasture lands, in the middle of the cattle, the cows, or in the middle of the eucalyptus plantations, or crossing areas of soybean plantations. This one has been harvested already. So it's a whole different context than what we have in the Pantanal, which is well-conserved, pristine, rich kind of a habitat. And another good example of tapirs in hell is what we're starting now is the region right under the Amazon, in the transition between the Cerrado and the Amazon. It's called the southern arc of deforestation. It's the main frontier of destruction of the Amazon. Most of the fires that you heard about last year happened in this part of the big Amazonian tropical forest. And that's where we're going to focus. We figured we're not needed in the middle of the protected Amazon, where just to study tapir ecology, we feel like we're mostly needed in the areas where these animals are being impacted on a daily basis. And when we talk about large-scale agriculture in the Amazon, in the southern arc, this is what we're talking about, this really large extensions, oceans of land covered with, mostly in that region, mostly with soybean, cotton, and corn. So what's the tapir in this kind of environment? We want to understand that. What's their exposure to contaminants, to pesticides? What's their exposure to fire, which is it's widely used in that region. Mining is another one of the threats we're going to investigate in the Amazon, in the southern arc. There are several concessions in the area, and again, we want to understand what's a tapir in the interface between the Amazonian forest and mining, mostly iron extraction. How do they cope with that kind of a threat? And palm oil, which it's coming to Latin America very quickly. It's establishing itself as a crop, as a plantation very quickly. In Brazil, it's still very much under control, but again, we want to understand how tapirs are impacted by the expansion of palm oil in the southern arc of deforestation. So as you can see, we have been able to do all this really cool science. We have collected amazing data, really robust, really adequate for the development for conserving tapirs, for developing strategies, the most appropriate, realistic strategies to conserve them. And we are publishing. We have masters and PhD students working with us, and that's really, really nice. But at some point, we realized that most people still think that this is a tapir. This is a giant anteater, and this is not a tapir. Tapirs do not eat ants or termites, never, ever. But lots of people in Brazil and around the world still think that this is a tapir. And so we figured that we were just talking to the converted. We were just preaching to the converted, our friends in the universities, in the conservation world. We were not talking to the general public who actually needs to learn. We need them to learn what a tapir is. So we added many other components to the work. One of them is education and outreach. So in each one of those sites where we operate, we have education programs, working with kids and teenagers and bringing the story of the tapir to this kind of audience. We have scientific tourism programs running in most of the study areas. So we bring people like the general public to come and work side by side with us, to see what we're doing, to be exposed to the routine of a research program, and to fall in love with the habitat, fall in love with tapirs, fall in love with conservation, and go back home and talk to everyone about their experience. Communication is also something that we spent quite a bit of time working on communication. We have a member of the team who's an expert on communication, and he spends quite a bit of time putting tapirs on social media. We have a very strong presence on social media, all kinds of profiles. We also work with the media itself, with the press here in Brazil. So in most of the expeditions we run, we usually bring a film crew or a newspaper crew with us, because we need the support of the media to spread the word about tapirs. And we use platforms that we're part of, such as National Geographic, such as TED. And with the help of these different platforms, internationally and nationally, we're able to expose tapirs, to bring exposure to tapirs to different audiences, to people who wouldn't otherwise hear about these animals. So we use whatever communication tools we get exposed to spread the word about the tapir conservation cause. And that's more or less what I wanted to say. We have the institutional support from a number of organizations around the world, in Brazil and internationally. Lots of zoos, lots of NGOs, all kinds of governmental agencies here in Brazil. And these people, they provide different kinds of support, expertise, in-kind support, logistics, you name it, so that we can work, we can make the work happen. And this is our current financial support, and that we could not be more grateful for all the different kinds of support, financial, in-kind, and institutional, from all these different organizations. We wouldn't be able to do what we do. We wouldn't have been able to do what we did for the past 25 years without their support. And that's it. Here's my contact if anybody would like to get in touch and ask questions. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much, Patricia. Yeah, we'll definitely put those details up if people want to learn more about this incredible animal.
Please do.
So I have a question to start us off. Why tapirs? How did you get involved and why them? I can see why the babies are so cute, but what really started your love for this kind of work and this animal?
I always wanted. I grew up in the middle of the Atlantic forest, and I grew up with animals. I grew up in the forest, and that was part of me. And I knew that I wanted to work with nature, with animals, and I was passionate about large mammals. So nothing better than the largest land mammal of South America for me, right?
Definitely. And so for people wanting to live a life like yours, can you explain what is a day in the life when you're really researching? What time do you wake up in the morning? What do you eat during the day? How far into the forest do you go?
We work particularly in the Pantanal. We work in a really remote place. It's 7 hours inside the Pantanal. There is no internet. I couldn't communicate with Joe for the past 20 days while I was in the Pantanal. So I got in touch with him today when I got back, and so it's hard to describe, but yeah, we wake up around 4. We have a brief breakfast around 4:35, and we go check box traps, see if we have captured tapirs over the night before. We check our camera traps. We come back for a quick lunch and lots of rice and beans and cassava flour, and we spend most of the afternoons processing data, sitting in front of the computer, just processing photos from the camera traps and processing all the data that comes in, the crazy amounts of data that comes in every single day.
Yeah, it looks like you guys have a lot of data, a lot of research, a lot of information for the world to know about this incredible creature.
Yeah.
One more question. How is COVID impacting your research and your work? And also, is it impacting tapirs? Can they get COVID? Do we know?
Mm. It doesn't look like it's impacting tapirs. We sampled the animals, as I mentioned, and we haven't been able to find anything yet. We have been extra careful because we manipulate the animals, so we have been taking extra measures to keep the animals safe. We have been able to work in the Pantanal because it's very remote. So far it's been free from COVID. So as long as we're careful when we're out here, if we keep healthy out here, we can mix up, we can get together as a team and go to the field, and it should be okay. It is okay. But in the Amazon, we were supposed to start in 2020, and we were not able to go up north because the situation in the northern part of Brazil was very serious in Amazonas and Pará states. So the project as a whole was seriously impacted.
Yeah. All right, we have one question coming in. Ariane Harris is asking, is there an existing threat of the bush meat industry on tapir populations where you work?
Not where we work, not in the Pantanal, not in the Cerrado. There's poaching, but not bushmeat. But in the Amazon, yes. And if you go to places like Peru, if you go to places like Ecuador, where the problem of bushmeat in the Amazonian parts of this country is where the problem of bushmeat is very serious. Yes, tapirs are very much part of that.
Yeah. Wow. So there seems to be a lot of threats out there, and thank you for outlining them and
Yeah.
showing them. It seems like one of the really big ones is human development, agriculture, mining, and really the economic growth and the use of the land. Is there a way to do it sustainably for the tapirs, do you think?
There's ways to do it sustainably for many species. There's let's say green certified sugarcane plantations. There's really lots of really good sustainable models for not only for sugarcane, for soy, for corn, for cotton. But this cost more, and it requires a lot more work for the farmers. And so these are models that we have to try and promote as much as possible, and that's also part of the mitigation work that we do, and just convince people that they can actually produce more, they can be more productive if they're more sustainable. And it's a movement that it's been growing here in Brazil. The president of the Brazilian Cattle Ranching and Large Scale Agriculture Association is very much pro sustainability. So it's a model that's been growing, and let's hope it continues.
Great. Well, it sounds like people around the world can make sustainable choices for these kinds of large-scale productions that often happen in Brazil.
Yeah.
So thank you for shedding some light on the impact of some of these threats and how it's impacting the wildlife in Brazil. That's what it's all about here at Global BioFest. And we're going to bring Jesse in. So thank you so much, Patricia. And
thank you.
yeah, well, take care.